Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. I will call the January 7th Select Board meeting to order, our first meeting of the year. I don't believe that we have any changes to the agenda, so we'll accept that as written. And I will turn it over to Greg Tidman, the Assistant Town Manager, for announcements.
Happy New Year. However, I believe the town manager would like to read the announcements.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. So this meeting is being video and audio recorded. And our first announcement is legislative updates with our Nantucket legislative delegation, Senator Sear and Representative Moakley. But before we get to that, if we could maybe do the housing items first, they'll be quick. And then because the legislative report, I think, is going to be a little bit more than just a standard announcement. So moving right to items number 3 and 4, those are housing announcements. I'm going to turn that to the Deputy Housing Director, Dylan Metchampel. He's going to do those two.
Thank you, Libby. Dylan Metchampel, Town Deputy Housing Director. The first is that the Affordable Housing Trust is seeking proposals for its year-round deed restriction pilot program. This program is designed to provide housing stability, security, and affordability for those living and working on Nantucket. The program offers a financial incentive to Nantucket property owners to place a permanent deed restriction on their homes to limit the sale or rental to year-round Nantucket residents. For folks interested in applying, the deadline to submit questions is January 9th, 2026 at 2 p.m. So coming up. And the deadline to submit applications is January 28th, 2026, with awards announced on February 27th, 2026. And there is information on the Affordable Housing Trust website page for how to apply and how to submit questions through OpenGov. So I would direct people there. So that's the first one. The second one is that the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, the EOHLC, approved the addition of 64 rental units in Tacoma Green to Nantucket's subsidized housing inventory, or SHI list, bringing Nantucket's SHI to 8% of the 10% state requirement. Staff have applied to the EOHLC for an additional year of safe harbor through December 10th, 2027. I'm sorry, this is my fault. There's a typo in the packet. It said December 10th, 2026. It's December 10th, 2027. And that will allow us to maintain local control over unfriendly Chapter 40B developments. I was asked to provide a little bit of clarity because there's been a lot of movement around the SHI list. So just to give some context, at the start of December, with the addition of Meadows 1, 2 Habitat for Humanity housing ownership units, and 1 Sandpiper Place home ownership unit, we reached 7% of the SHI. The EOHLC has approved our request for safe harbor for these additions that we received in early December. So we're currently in safe harbor through October 2026. With this most recent addition of Tacoma Green to the SHI list, we are now at 8%. And this was at the end of December. And as I said, we've submitted another request for an extension of safe harbor because of these additions through December 10th, 2027. We have not heard back yet, but we have no reason to think that would not be approved. I was asked by the town manager to put together a little context for what this means, what 8% means statewide. So certainly on Nantucket, reaching 8% is a big goal, representing real affordable housing added to the island. In 2019, we were at 2.5%, or 150 units. We're now at 497 units. When we reach 10% in the next year or two, it will be a significant milestone. But we want to obviously clarify that that doesn't mean the affordable housing situation is solved. While it does represent real housing, the standard for what qualifies for the SHI list does not meet all housing needs. And so once we are above that 10%, we're able to focus more of our time on the broad array of housing that's needed, not just what can actually be put on the SHI list. And I'd like to add that the 10% standard is based on the decennial census. So come 2030, we could and probably will see that bar shift. That could mean that our percentage of units on the SHI is even higher. The total number of year-round housing units is smaller, or it could mean that our percentage decreases if the total number of year-round housing units goes up. So we are really excited to have reached 8%, and we're energized to keep working towards that 10%. And it's a sign of all of the work that's being done with the support of the community, the town departments and boards, of course, including the select board. But it by no means means that we are done with our work. I want to be quick, but I was also asked to, like I said, put together some context for what it means with the rest of the state in the context of the state. And so relying on the most recent data, which is from September 30th, 2025, there are 94 municipalities of the 351 in the state that are above 10%. There are 41 municipalities, or 11% of all municipalities, that are like Nantucket, between an 8 and 10%. And then 216%, or 61.5%, are below the 8%. So we're in the 2/3. And as we all know, housing on Nantucket, given the location, the geography and everything, is a particular challenge. So we really are both a regional and a state leader in housing and making additions to the SHI list. I did put together a bunch of numbers that reflect how we compare to the Cape and Islands and how we compare to other seasonal communities. But I'll just say that, bearing in mind that we have Senator Sear and Representative Moakley, just being quick, that there are only 3 towns on the Cape and Islands that have cleared the 10% threshold. And for context, one is Aquina, which has 37 total units, and that gets them above on the SHI. And Orleans has 367 units. So we're at 497 and not quite at that 10%, but we're working at a different scale and obviously in a particular context with limited lands. And I'd like to say we did just beat out our friends in Provincetown by 0.01%. They're at 8.03%. And so I have more, but I'll save it for another time. But just to emphasize that we see ourselves as a regional leader and a state leader on the making progress here. Thank you.
Quick
Yeah,
quick
go ahead.
comment. Yeah, I want to thank you. And I will say this, to me, this is something that we really didn't pay a lot of attention to my early years on the select board. And it was one of those hot potatoes that got bounced back and forth from various departments. And it really shows that once we put the resources and the attention and the focus onto it, the success that is possible. And I think that that's, I think what you guys have done and hopefully will continue to do is an example, a good example.
Thanks.
So thank you.
And just based on what Matt said, I'll just say, of the 43 communities that have accepted the seasonal communities designation, almost 80% are below 8%, and only 5 of the municipalities are north of 10, which obviously we're rapidly approaching. So, more broadly, we are doing really well. And the same is true of, I looked at the most expensive places to live based on housing numbers, and we're doing well there relative. So we'll keep it up. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dylan. That is really excellent news. So a couple other quick things. The select board will be holding its annual public hearing on the proposed fiscal 27 general fund budget next Wednesday, the 14th at 5:30 in the community room. And that is it for the general announcement. So I would introduce our state senator, Senator Julian Sear, and our state representative, Thomas Moakley, to go over the list that is in your packet of items that we were asking for updates on, and anything else that you guys think we should know about.
Sure.
Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Libby, and thanks, Dawn, and members of the select board. It's good to be with you folks, at least virtually, but Happy New Year, and hope y'all had some restful time and a good time with your families. This work isn't easy, especially at the municipal level, especially when, the folks serving on the Nantucket Select Board, you are making big, tough decisions and big challenges. And I think it really is right. I really want to echo that, Nantucket is a regional and state leader on so much, especially on housing. And what's really, right, when you do this policy work, I'm a policy wonk, right? I got into this because I like solving policy problems and I like figuring things out. And I was a staffer before this. It's really deeply meaningful, and it's really exciting when you see laws that first you worked with the community to formulate and create, and then work to convince your colleagues to pass those laws, and you get those laws passed and you get it signed into law, and then to really see the implementation at work And, to see what Nantucket is already doing, when we look at the seasonal communities designation, that was an innovation that we came up with. Y'all are already putting, housing for municipal workers, year-round deed restrictions. You're already putting the tools to work, and the final reg's already been out. I mean, it's just, I don't want to, let's not pat ourselves on the back too much, right? But it's just deeply rewarding and fulfilling to be able to be doing this work. And I really want to thank Nantucket for tackling particularly the housing crisis head on. You're going to hear from Thomas and I. Thomas is going to give an update on home rule petitions. Nantucket has the most home rule petitions of any town in the Commonwealth, so we work hard on your behalf every day legislatively. Certainly in my opening remarks, I definitely want to acknowledge the Inspector General's report from the Steamship Authority. I think the Inspector General described a cascade of failures at the Steamship Authority. This is a gut punch to islanders, our residents, the workers, the business owners who are relying on this lifeline, and the kind of mismanagement that we now have documented, right? This does real damage, not just to the finances of the authority, which, to their credit are strong, but to public trust. And rebuilding that trust and some accountability is going to need to happen. We're excited to see a new general manager starting. I think they may have started just this week. We are eager for him to get to work. But I think, you have heard from me, you've heard from Thomas Moakley, and you've heard from Dylan Fernandez, who used to represent Nantucket and now is representing Falmouth and the Upper Cape. We are seriously looking at changes to avoid these cascade of failures, avoid the culture of a sort of a yes man culture that we've seen the Steamship Authority. Islanders deserve an absolutely exceptional lifeline. And so part of that, I think, is reflecting on the Inspector General's report. Senator Fernandez has a bill related to term limits. Islanders on Martha's Vineyard really like that bill and want it. We've heard from the Nantucket board saying that you folks don't necessarily like that approach. But I think we want to hear, and I'm really eager to hear sort of feedback on this. The one suggestion the Inspector General said to me, I was talking to him a bit about, the report. One piece he talked about was how the criteria to be on the Board of Governors is purely geographical, right? The only requirement is you have to have a representative from one island, the other ports. And we're not asking for specific expertise as it relates to management, marine operations, both, a whole host of things, right? And so that was one suggestion he encouraged us to look at as we're looking to reform the board. So eager and curious for your thoughts on this. But I do expect that your legislative delegation is going to, you can't not see a report like the Inspector General put out and not have us make sure that the Steamship Authority is continues to be an excellent lifeline. I also want to say one thing on one other piece on this. The fear always is that when the very any time of making any amendment to the Steamship Authority is that in opening up the statute to change something, that could let in a flood of amendments. I can assure you that will not happen so long as I'm in the position that I am in the Massachusetts Senate. I am the Assistant Majority Whip. There is no bill that's going to pass the Senate that is going to adversely affect Nantucket or Martha's Vineyard. There's no bill. So I just want to put that out there. So eager for the board's thoughts and feedback on that. And I think, Thomas, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about home rules. And I think there were some specific questions about some of these other more specific bills that he'll get into. And then, glad to answer any and all questions that you folks may have.
Good evening, everybody. Excuse me if I have to clear my throat a little bit. I'm a little bit under the weather, slightly losing my voice, but very much appreciate the time that you're giving us today to give you guys a little bit of an update on some of the things that we've been working on. I just wrapped up my first year in office. I was sworn in on January 1st, 2025, which is wild that is a year ago now. It went by so fast, but it's been an incredible experience, and I really, really love this job, and I really consider it to be not only an honor and a privilege, but also very fun to represent Nantucket and to have had the opportunity to get to know some of you over the past year and change as well. one of the biggest things that I was able to do at the very beginning of my term is to identify and hire RJ Turcott, who's there in the room as my Nantucket liaison, who's been doing great work on behalf of the town in the legislature. In addition to the work that is the most public that we do in the House and the Senate, which is, filing bills, hearing those bills on committee, having them go to the floor of the House, bringing our colleagues on board, hopefully getting them passed and on the governor's desk for her signature. A large part of the work is actually outside of that legislative process, addressing constituent issues that come before us. And that applies not only just to individual constituents who need help navigating something like unemployment or RMV issues or whatever it may be, but also assisting I represent 9 towns. Senator Sear represents more than 9. And not all of those towns have staff attorneys. Not all those towns have grant administrators that are dedicated to seeking and pursuing grant opportunities. So that is something where we try to fill in and help with all those, just to make sure that because we're smaller communities, in a corner of the Commonwealth, far away from Boston, we don't get left out as far as seeking those funding sources. So I've made sure to make sure that, that when we hear about those opportunities, we're passing those along to the town, offering our support just so we can flag for any of the state agencies that are administrating those that they're priorities for Senators here and myself to try to get the town as much help with your bottom line as possible pursuing those projects. This year as well, had a great opportunity in having Governor Healy visit. Senator Sear's office and mine were helping the governor's office in coordinating that visit. They saw some of the progress of the affordable housing project in town, as well as visiting the sustainable Nantucket farm. Was able to connect the governor with a lot of the local leaders and both in government and nonprofits there. I think that was a huge success, and hopefully we'll be able to repeat that before long as well. Excuse me. In the budget this year, we were very successful for Nantucket as well. Senator Sear led on securing off-island medical transportation for those people who are being treated at the hospital who have to be treated off-island following that. The entire Cape and Islands delegation, excuse me, the entire Cape and Islands delegation was worked together in order to save the Cape and Islands Mental Health Center in Pecasset, as well as securing shellfish propagation funding that's shared throughout Barnstable, Dukes, and Nantucket counties, supporting the Cape and Islands Veterans Outreach Center, a number of other regional priorities, including calling out our cell phone companies for intermittent and unreliable service, particularly on Martha's Vineyard in Nantucket. And we've actually had follow-up conversations with 2 of the major cell carriers about what their issues are, what their plans are for Nantucket, and how we can help to deliver the best possible service, particularly during the summer months when the load capacity is that much higher for islanders. And then I'm hoping that this session will also see the arrival of an environmental bond bill, and I've personally met multiple times with the town's Department of Natural Resources to talk about some of the priorities, as well as Leah Hill about some of the priorities that we may be able to help with if we're successful in getting that bill passed. So in addition to that, we've also been working on some of the home rule petitions that have put forward by Nantucket. Unfortunately, one of the realities of the legislative process in Massachusetts, you can thank John Adams and our Constitution, that is the oldest operative constitution in the world, is that with every new legislative session, all of the bills reset, which means that all 7, or I think about 8,000 bills get a public hearing if they are timely filed, and all home rule petitions as well. And that has been a lot of what has been taking place last year. I was assigned to 5 committees, including the Judiciary Committee, Tourism, Arts and Culture, Cybersecurity, a lot of bills meaningful bills have been reported out of those committees, among many others. Senator Sear is the chair of the Housing Committee this session, which is huge for the new seasonal communities designation and other proposals related to that. But following that committee process, essentially starting around November, after those bills had been favorably reported, and I think just about almost all of the Nantucket home rule petitions have been either heard in hearing or have been favorably reported out of their relevant committees. And then it's just a matter of each of us lobbying our colleagues to actually get those to the next step. So far, the pace has started to quicken. In December, the House of Representatives passed 2 of Nantucket's home rule petitions, including the charter amendment to make the Nantucket charter gender neutral, as well as the bill conveying School Street, I believe, between the town and the county. And there's another one that is currently in the House Ways and Means Committee, where there were some wording issues at the last town meeting that we're resolving in partnership with the town. So hopefully that doesn't have to come back to you, but we're working hand in hand with the town to make sure that we do that in the most efficient way possible. All the other ones are, in the process, and we'll continue to lobby our colleagues to get those to the floors of either the House or the Senate, wherever they originated. If it starts with an H, it originated in the House. If it starts with an S, it originated in the Senate. And then it will go across to the other branch. Senator Sear's office and mine work together very, very closely to make sure that we get these things turned around as quickly as possible. I know it certainly doesn't feel that way, but that's kind of part of the process, and I think that you'll see a lot of movement on those soon, and we're keeping the town up to date. I had a number of open office hours on the island last year. I was planning to have some in December, but unfortunately it was on a particularly blustery day and the boats got canceled. I think I'm going to be rescheduling those for January 23rd. Exact time and location to be determined. RJ can keep you up to date on that. So that's just a few things. I don't want to keep you too long. I want to make sure that you have a chance to ask any questions and provide any comments that you may as well. Thank you very much.
And Thomas, let me first of all, I really want to get you some tea and put you to bed, my friend. And I should say Thomas Moakley has been such an ace and has really hit the ground running, and has been an awesome partner to me, who's been doing this a little longer, but he's been phenomenal, and he's done quite well in the House of Representatives, which is not an easy environment. You also asked about a few other things, so let's go through this bullet list quickly. Committee training requirements bill. This is actually a bill I filed that basically says if you're going to be on certain regulatory committees, you have to some training. That was advanced, and it's in Ways and Means. The remote participation in open town meeting bill. This is still in committee, so that's still through the committee process. You folks asked a little bit about double polls, where I think we're hoping to address double polls in the Mass Ready Act, which Thomas talked about, this environmental bond bill. There's going to be some pretty significant pieces. Also, if you look at the whole coastal resilience, and another area where Nantucket has led, a lot of that bill actually reflects that excellent work. Committee trainings. You asked about the bill exempting local bills from requiring state approval, Senate Bill 1471. It's a Roush bill, and that was referred to the Ways and Means Committee out of its first committee. We have not had determinations on the 2 Steamship Authority bills yet. One's related to the term limits, the other's related to the embarkation fee, and then Thomas gave you those other updates. I think folks asked for offshore wind. I mean, I would just, congratulate the town for reaching what seemed to be a fair and strong agreement with Vineyard Wind. The broader wind environment, I think, is tremendously uncertain in the near term, given the Trump administration's hostility. I would just remind when people are getting your energy bills this winter and probably for the next several years, we are going to continue to see very high electricity prices and energy prices in Massachusetts because we are deeply dependent on natural gas, and that's probably going to continue. The real plan was hydro and offshore wind filling in the gaps and needs that Massachusetts has. But your guess is as good as mine as far as where federal policy goes, where litigation ends up. And I don't think we will be seeing new projects moving forward tomorrow, and probably for some more time. And then you asked about e-bike and scooter safety legislation. There's been several bills that have been advanced favorably. Unclear if that's going to become a priority or not this session. I don't know if we'll have a transportation vehicle. And the last bill I want to mention is it's a bill that Thomas and I filed relative to dark money in politics. Nantucket actually probably has had the most in my district, the most sort of outside spending by individuals trying to influence a given topic, maybe say short-term rentals at town meeting. If you are a candidate for public office, like me, like all of you who've run for select board, you have to follow campaign finance law. You have to report your donors, your contributors. There is a loophole in Massachusetts campaign finance law. If you are spending money on a warrant article at town meeting that does not go to the ballot, you are exempt from those rules. So our bill, our dark money bill, would close that loophole, would apply the same rules for that level of spending. And actually that bill was advanced in the House, and it's now actually pending in third reading in the House. So good job, Thomas, for moving it there. And I think that covers most everything that was on your list. But glad to answer any and all questions. And again, really getting feedback from this board here tonight. And then also, I think all of you have my cell phone number, Thomas's cell phone number. Please, do not hesitate to reach out. We know you don't. But, always eager to keep doing good work together.
Thank you so much. Brooke Moore has a question.
Yeah. Hi, guys. Thanks for coming.
Hi.
Nice to see you both. It's been a while.
I know.
I have a question about the SSA term limits.
Mhm.
I mean, is there any chance that could be locally decided rather than have it mandated at the state level? In other words, give communities the option to implement term limits rather than require term limits, because we really don't think it's a good idea here because of the, it is a complex thing. And your point about knowledge base, right? When you get someone trained up and they've been in the position for a period of time, and then you make them move off, especially we're probably not going to have a lot of retired Marine engineers stepping up, to take our regional position. So that was just a thought I had that could be considered, because there is quite a difference of opinion between communities who have representatives on the authority board. So
yeah, it's Brooke, good to see you as always. Thank you for your, you're always thinking creatively. I think we have to look at that. I think my attorney would be like, how are you going to write that? I do want to assure people the way the term limit bill that Senator Fernandez filed is drafted, I think all the current members have several additional, get the full sort of 9-year term limit. So in practicality, if that bill were to be law, all the existing people that are on, basically you'd have another sort of 9 years to keep serving. I am, so we can look at that. I'd have to explore how that would work. I do think though that, if you read the Inspector General's report, you can't help but question the Board of Governors. And it shows that, I think you have a bit of a rubber stamp. So I think we want to make sure that we want to make sure that we're having our public authority that is challenging the management of that authority to be doing the absolute best, not squandering public money, which they were doing. My other thought is, separate but also interrelated with term limits, it is the, what would be the experience that you could have governors who have some expertise, but it would be written in a way, or is that a way? I don't know. Is that another way to kind of have some criteria on it? It's just, I think it's hard pressed for us to look at this report and be like, oh, there were some real problems with the general manager, but the Board of Governors is cool. I think, another alternative is we could impose sort of official management board on top of the Board of Governors, like we did with the MBTA. That seems a bit draconian to me, but I will look into see what's possible. And I think would appreciate further suggestions and sharing. But I do want to assure people that even if the term limit bill were to go into effect, there would be nearly a decade of time for the towns, or the town in this case, or the different ports to find, you know, a new person to serve in that role.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just, Julian, just to follow up on that
Yeah.
is, I think education is important, but I think there's also experience. And so if you're writing this up to say we only want people with certain degrees or certain industries, et cetera, you may miss out people that have experience, on the ground in this industry. So I would caution you, sort of to make it sort of a little wider, because, we've had very qualified, very good representatives here that might be skipped depending how you wrote it.
Yeah.
And who pick up the phone, who know everyone's name, who correct, the things and know as much or more than some of the people, doing the day-to-day in Hyannis. And so I think that, and help facilitate that for all of us out here. So I think that just be careful, with that, I think, with us in mind. Thank you.
Like, this is exactly the feedback I kind of want. And really, like, I represent two constituencies on Martha's Vineyard. Well, I represent three of the main ports. But I first and foremost, am very committed to the formulation that Islanders have the majority vote. On Martha's Vineyard, they're clamoring for, a lot of change to the Steamship Authority, which includes the term limit provision. And then on Nantucket, I think we're hearing something else. So I appreciate your feedback. I'm trying to figure out, all right, what makes sense for the good of strong operations of the Steamship Authority, understanding that I have, really two constituencies who are essential in this organization and who have a bit of a different perspective. So keep the creative thinking coming.
Okay, thank you. Dylan, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Senator Sear and Representative Moakley. I just was wondering if you had an update on the transfer fee, and in particular the Nantucket's home rule petition.
Yes, Senator Sear and I co-filed that, but it's under House docket number, so it's originating in the House. It had a hearing this past year. I've personally met with the chair of the House chair of the Revenue Committee, and I will say that he has done his homework. This is Chair Modero, a representative from East Boston. He really knows the issue, not only statewide, but recognizes the unique challenges that islands face, and also appreciates all the work that Nantucket is doing within your current legal authority to combat this problem. And I think that's a really good sign. We're still within the reporting period. So I'm having regular conversations with members of the Revenue Committee to get that reported favorably out. That is just the first hurdle. That will most likely be sent to the Ways and Means Committee. Continue to have conversations with them there. As you probably all know, this was a discussion in the legislature last session before I was elected. So everybody's very familiar with the concept of a luxury real estate transfer fee. I think there's just a lot of politics that get played, but my first priority is to get it for the towns that I represent that have asked for it. So if there's a window to do that strategically, I'm going to take it.
Which is every town you represent, I think. I would just add to that, right, that it's unlikely that this will be realized just as a home rule, because I think I now have 13 or 14 of the communities in the Cape and Islands district that are looking for this tool. The path that have been working towards is saying, hey, look, if you have a seasonal communities designation, then maybe you can have then you can have a transfer fee, right? So that's the other sort of strategy here. Really want to thank Nantucket for Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard drove the conversation and got us so far in last session on this issue. I was actually really deeply frustrated to we worked to get the governor to come out in favor of this proposal, and the statewide advocates really disappointed me in really not doing much to carry the water. But Islanders, both on Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard, and then following up with some folks from the Cape, folks were extraordinary. We need to keep up the pressure here on this, and we need to find an opportunity to how to get this done. If you listen to the Senate President has put on the agenda for this winter into spring, she's put a primary health care bill, and she's put a housing bill on the table as part of our affordability agenda. I lead that committee, and she basically has told me to be bold and nothing's off the table. So I'm going to be trying my best to ensure that part of this encompasses this absolutely essential tool. Really, if you look at seasonal communities gives us the toolkit to do what we need to really put a major dent and to solve this housing crisis, or at least to really ameliorate it big time. The missing piece is the revenue, right? And without a revenue source, this is just not going to be realized at the scale that we need. So this continues to be my highest priority. And glad to have Thomas working with me and really working the bill to make sure that key committee or chairs in the House really understand this and don't just dismiss it.
Thank you both.
Thank you. I think Christy Ferrantella has a follow-up question. She's online.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Julian and Thomas, for being here. It's actually not a follow-up question related to housing, surprisingly. As both of you know, I've been a strong advocate for expanding access to childcare and trying to increase affordability. And I'm just wondering if there's anything going on at the state level that can increase access to childcare and also reduce cost for families. I've been doing a lot of research around other Cape towns and even Martha's Vineyard, and they all have access to community development block grants for funding childcare support programs. And Nantucket doesn't have access to this funding, so we're often seen as a wealthy community. So I'm just wondering, how can you guys work at the State House to help support our community? Thank you.
So this is something that Christy, as I'm sure all you in the room know, Christy's been working on a lot. And when she wrote a very well put together article about the specific issue in early childcare facing the island, she was thoughtful enough to share that with Julian and me. And we turned around and reached out to the commissioner of the Department of Early Education, which is under the Department of Education at the state, and set up a face-to-face meeting with her. And we talked not in generalities about state policy, but about what are we going to do for Nantucket. And we have an open line of communication with her. Essentially, what we need from the town is to identify exactly who the providers are, at what stage each of them are in terms of if there's any that are looking to get licenses, if there's any trying to come on board, what are the numbers that we're looking at as far as those who are seeking childcare who can't find any placement. And then we're going to see what options are available with the help of the state to address that. And that comes as a direct result of Christie's and others' advocacy on the island. So that is very much an ongoing conversation, not just as far as statewide policy goes, but specifically how are we going to make it work on Nantucket? Senator Sear, you want to add anything?
You covered it. We literally met with her, I think, just before Christmas. So we're going to keep working on this as a challenge. I think there's some good examples you can look to around stipends that Outer and Lower Cape towns have done directly to families. But you got to have providers, right? And I think EEC is interested in looking how we can recruit or probably home grow some additional providers on the island because it is deeply underserved.
Thank you.
Very much.
And
That's really, really good to hear. Christy, go ahead.
I was just going to say thank you. And thank you again for all the work you're doing on the transfer fee as well.
Thanks. Tom?
Good evening, Senator and Rep. Thank you for being here and taking the time to present to us tonight. I have two quick questions. Senator, you were very involved in the PFAS task force, and I'm sure continue to work on that. If you have any updates on what next steps might be for legislation in that area. And then I also had heard, and you just noted that you were been tasked with heading up, I'm sure with the House Chair as well, the next housing bill. Curious to know any preview and how what may be in there may apply to seasonal communities, if you have anything yet, please.
Sure. Thanks, Tom. Good to see you. Happy New Year. On PFAS, so I'm the Senate lead on omnibus PFAS legislation. We filed it, went through all the committee process, and actually made it to all the way to Ways and Means. Last session, refiled the bill. The bill's been extended in public health. I'm a little, I'm working to advance that bill and to get it out. Hoping potentially that the Mass Ready Act, this environmental bond bill, could be a good vehicle there. So we continue to work on this, and I know this has been a challenge for a number of islanders, and the town's done a lot of work here. So hopefully getting some real traction on this, it's urgently needed. And then, really, if you look at the housing crisis statewide, Massachusetts is short, 220,000 housing units. Just the latest information came out, this week. We're seeing a net outmigration of people who look like me and Thomas, right? Young professionals, who are leaving because they can't afford to live here, right? And not just in places like Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, or Provincetown, which, have an inherent geographical scarcity, but really across most of Eastern Massachusetts. And the tricky thing with housing policy, right, is this is not like, oh, we're going to create a program or pass a law, and then, it takes, as the town knows well, it takes a long time to build things. So I'm a real believer that this has to include, we need an all of the above strategy. This includes zoning reform. This involves permitting reform. Permitting any project in Massachusetts is like absurd. I think you got to have a revenue source around how you're going to pay for things. And then, of course, I think there's a lot of discussion about, we have a rent control ballot initiative that's going on the ballot, this fall, unless we do something or some sort of compromise is met. So, certainly that piece as well is in there. If you really want to get into the weeds, the Joint Committee on Housing, or the Senate part of the Joint Committee on Housing, put out bills on a Yes in My Backyard bill and a permitting reform bill. And if you want, we can follow up and send those to you. We're trying to be pretty ambitious because we know that the scale of the problem is really steep. And we're also clear-eyed that, particularly in permitting and zoning reform, a lot of the housing production we need to see sort of statewide. There's a whole lot of other factors we can't control. Interest and inflation, investment in multifamily housing has dried up a bit because of inflation. So it's a really big, complicated issue. As far as seasonal communities, I am weaving in seasonal communities as to things as much as possible, and really looking for any opportunities where I can get into, perhaps a transfer fee for seasonal communities into any sort of vehicle. I do think that anyway. So the other thing folks should look to is, we've had a placeholder bill that actually I've kept in the housing committee related to seasonal communities, basically technical fixes we need to make. We've worked with the town actually on this. I'd encourage the committee as well to read the year-end report on seasonal communities. It's actually quite brief, not brief, but it's very manageable. You can read it. It's not going to take hours and hours, and we can send that to all of you so you can follow that. And the real, the vision for seasonal communities is this becomes a statutory way for us to get at some of the unique challenges and priorities that we have as seasonal communities. So very much welcome ideas on that. So anyway, that's a lengthy, housing's a big challenging topic, and we got our work cut out for us. And I certainly do have my work cut out for me.
Tom, very briefly on the Protecting Public Health from Forever Chemicals bill, the PFAS bill that Senator Sear is sponsoring in the Senate. Speaker Pro Tem Kate Hogan sponsors the companion bill in the House, and it was actually just passed favorably out of the Public Health Committee in the House just this week. So hopefully that's a sign that it's a priority of legislators in both chambers, and maybe that'll give it a better chance of success at large this year.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you both so much for logging in tonight and giving us all of these updates. Appreciate it. Happy New Year.
Thank you guys for hosting us so much. Really appreciate your time. Next time you see me, I will sound very different.
Feel better.
Feel better, Thomas. All right.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Good
Thank you,
night.
guys.
Thank you so much.
Good night. Last, we have select board announcements and comments. Does anyone want to raise anything? Okay. Update on public comments and questions from prior select board meetings. I have a brief statement. On December 17th, Luke Thornwell spoke about the African Meeting House Investigation Procurement Work Group. The town's response is the town has previously addressed related questions and publicly posted responses. They have been read into the record at prior select board meetings as part of the town's responses to public comments. To avoid duplicating information already available, we respectfully direct you to the town's compiled responses, including those addressing questions raised by members of the African Meeting House Work Group, which can be found at www.nantucket-ma.gov/3740/2025-responses. And with that, we'll open public comment for items that are otherwise not on our agenda for discussion this evening. Any speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. Clifford?
Yes, Cliff Williams, 11 Somerset Road. I'm not trying to be redundant when it comes to the African Meeting House. We're just trying to clarify, and maybe hopefully I could call through the chairman tonight. So maybe we could have a meeting with the investigators and see where we stand and see how far they've progressed. I know they requested for names and information. I'm just wondering if they have received any of those, because we have a lot of information to give them and a lot of names for people they can speak to. One of the questions was it an ongoing investigation? And I believe you said that it was handed off. I know on 6/19/2019, the chief stated he had passed on the investigation to the Attorney General, Inspector General, or Cape and Islands DA. And Selectman Fee asked how would we know that things were being progressed, and he said he was going to give updates. So I don't believe you answered there was updates, or you had any updates since that time, since 2019. So I guess the question still is it an ongoing investigation, and with who? If it is, where is it at, and what are they doing? I don't want to be redundant, but it seems like the best thing to do is have a meeting with these investigators, and it would probably solve a lot of the problems that we've had as a committee, or at least for me. Affordable housing, again, it's been talked about. It's fantastic. I guess I'm confused on whether we want to build affordable houses, because I came forward with the cottage colony concept several times along with Steve Murray, and it was kind of shot down. It seems like we're subsidizing housing or subsidizing rent. So maybe I can get some clarity on whether or not we actually want to do those projects for affordable housing, or we just want to subsidize. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, good evening. James Lewis here, 83 Hummock Pond Road. I have been in touch with Noel Trent, Dr. Noel Trent, who was part of the investigation for the African American Meeting House. And she said that she hasn't been working with that organization for 2 years and is no longer affiliated at all with that organization. So I am calling for clarity on whether or not she's even still part of that committee or organization or investigation. I'm hosting a fundraiser for the African American Meeting House, and to publicly benefit Jim Barrows and Rosemary Samuelson, and partially compensate them or reimburse them for their legal fees, which they are producing out of pocket. And they referred me to Noel Trent. Noel Trent said, I am not at that post anymore, not involved at all. And it's been 2 years. So I'm just calling for some clarity and some investigation as to whether, and it just seems like a lot of heel dragging and a lot of nowhere, no non-answers, non-clarity. And I don't even understand how, well, let's just put it this way. The defendants are using public money to defend themselves, and it's a conflict of interest, in my opinion. So we're trying to reimburse Rosemary Samuelson and Jim Barrows, who are defending the rights, the civil liberties and civil rights of all people on Nantucket Island out of their own pocket. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Good evening, Campbell Sutton. Happy New Year, everyone. Hate to disappoint by not saying anything. Now, so in what Senator Sear and Representative Moakley were saying when they were talking about zoning, I think it would be really nice if they tested their zoning in different towns before they sort of come down with something large. I know the ADU thing sort of threw us off as a town in terms of our zoning, given what we already have. And there's a bit of a conflict, took a lot of energy to try and straighten that out. So would seem if you could test the policy first or ask towns for feedback on it might be helpful. Okay, so my other piece was the other night I was at a planning board meeting that didn't quite come off because of the new system you have here, whatever it is. But there were only two representatives physically there. And I was told that you no longer have to have a quorum of people physically in the meeting. And I could understand that during COVID, but I find that to be a little difficult now, because if you don't have a quorum of people that people can actually talk to, you don't know if the microphones are working, if people are fading in and out on the Zoom calls. And I just found that a little problematic. So I thought I'd pass that along. And I had another thing and I forgot what it was. Oh, well, I still have a minute 17, so that's pretty good. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak this evening? Okay, seeing none. There's no new business. We will move to approval of minutes, warrants, and pending contracts. Are there any questions or comments or changes?
Move
Or-
approval of all.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That carries unanimously. Consent items. Brooke, would you mind reading those?
So for gift acceptances, there's a number of them, which is kind of cool. Okay. To the Health and Human Services Department, a donation of $10,000 from the Resteri Family Fund for the Health and Human Services Department. And a gift of $10,000 from Sandbar AC LLC to support the Nantucket Athenaeum social worker programming. To the Natural Resources Department, a gift of $5,200 from Sandbar AC LLC to help improve surface water quality on Nantucket. A gift to our island home of $150 from Maureen Glowacki for the residents of our island home. And to the Fire Department, a gift of $1,000 from the Barry S. Sternlick Foundation for the Fire Department. I move that we accept all these gifts and donations for their designated purposes with thanks to the donors.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously. Next up, we have citizen departmental committee requests and reports. First up, we have the Housing Department review potential impacts of proposed Board of Health septic system regulation amendments on affordable housing. Good evening again.
Hello again. Dylan Metchenpel, Town of Nantucket's Deputy Housing Director. while Erica pulls up the presentation, I'm here to present a review of the potential impacts on housing of the proposed Board of Health septic system regulation amendments, as Don said. Okay, if you wouldn't mind going to the next page, Erica. Okay, so I just want to start with a little bit of background on the septic system regulations themselves. That can be a little convoluted, but talking to John Hedden, my understanding is that with a conventional septic system, homeowners are allowed essentially 1 bedroom per 10,000 square feet on their lot. And so traditionally, the Board of Health has heard variance requests that allow additional bedrooms in exchange for the homeowner upgrading to an innovative alternative or IA septic system, which is a septic system that's more efficient at filtering out nitrogen. So for a 40,000 square foot lot, they could go from 4 to 6 bedrooms. For a 20,000 square foot lot, they could go from 2 to 3 bedrooms. And as John described it to me, another way to think about it would be that with this conventional septic system, as I said, bedroom for every 10,000 square feet, or with an IA system, a bedroom for every 6,667 square feet on the property. Next slide, please. So in June, citing multiple concerns, the Board of Health implemented a temporary moratorium on septic variance requests in nitrogen sensitive areas. During that moratorium, the Board of Health began considering amendments to the Hummock Pond watershed and wellhead protection district regulations, which would eliminate the septic variance requests and require an innovative alternative system going forward. On October 16th, 2025, they held preliminary discussions to consider opening a public hearing. Then on November 20th, they opened the public meeting, which was continued on December 18th and will be continued again at their next meeting on December 15th, 2026. I'm sorry, January 15th, 2026. Next slide, please. So given the potential impact that eliminating the variance and requiring IA systems may have on town and affordable housing trust owned housing properties and the housing landscape at large, at the November 20th meeting, Tom Dixon requested that the housing department staff present to the select board. So for context, 18 of town and affordable housing trust owned housing properties do exist within the wellhead protection area. We do not own any in the Hummock Pond area at the moment. As I'll go into throughout the rest of the presentation, I'm going to be talking about what the requiring of IA systems and the potential elimination of the variance, the impact that it may have on those properties, and again, the landscape more broadly. All right, next slide, please, Erica. So just for context, this slide here shows the areas that we're talking about when we say the Hummock Pond watershed and the wellhead protection districts. Next slide, please, Erica. And just to give you a little bit more clarity on what that regulations would actually be with the amendment. So it would require an IA system should the existing septic system fail, if there was new construction or structural alteration or system expansion. So if you were building new construction or if you were renovating, and obviously if you're expanding out, and then property transfers, which is a key one. And then the language in both would be nitrogen loading credits for greater effluent flows will not be permitted. So in plain language, property owners within the Hummock Pond watershed or the wellhead protection district must upgrade to an IA system if their conventional system fails. If they have plans for new construction, meaning an increase in inhabitable space, new build or renovations or property transfer, and it eliminates the septic variance requests. Next slide, please. So this map just shows an overview. Sorry, it might be a little hard to see for people not online, but just shows an overview of where town-owned and affordable housing trust-owned properties are. Red is town-owned, purple is town-owned and within the wellhead, blue is owned by the Affordable Housing Trust, and yellow is owned by the Affordable Housing Trust and within the wellhead. Next slide, please. And then this is just a closer up showing the actual properties that are in the wellhead. Next slide, please. So of the relevant properties that the town or the Affordable Housing Trust owns, all of them are connected to water, and all of them, with one exception, are on sewer. So that mitigates the immediate impact that these regulations would have in terms of either the need to upgrade to an IA system or the need to if we wanted to request an additional bedroom, excuse me. But as we plan for the future and as we look for more opportunities, especially to avoid new development, given the lack of space and environmental concerns, to convert market rate units to affordable units through purchases and collaborations with various organizations, the IA requirement and the elimination of the variance could pose significant barriers. And so this would largely be in terms of the added cost of purchasing, installing, and maintaining an IA system, which I will talk about in a few minutes. And of course, losing the flexibility to increase bedroom counts in exchange for the innovative alternative system, which would be one mechanism for folks, including the town, to be able to potentially finance the more expensive system. Okay, next slide, please. So outside of just the impact on potential affordable housing trust or town-owned housing properties, the proposed regulations would have an effect on the housing landscape more broadly. So first, there's a drastic increase in cost. A conventional system costs somewhere between $12,000 and $17,000, whereas an IA system is approximately $25,000 for the hardware, $10,000 for the installation, and then $2,400 in annual maintenance. So other numbers like Eastham cites $40,000 is sort of the anticipated upfront cost for an IA system. And so obviously that's significantly much more expensive than a conventional system. Given that, we would anticipate situations where year-round residents unable to afford the IA system may have to either sell their properties, risking losing that year-round resident and year-round property to a summer compound, or they themselves having to begin renting short-term to offset the costs. So in other words, we fear losing year-round residents because of the cost burden of the IA system. Moreover, since one of the triggers for requiring an IA system is a property transfer, this could complicate the logistics and financing of deals, certainly with the Affordable Housing Trust and other properties. And as we're thinking about the covenant lot and covenant home, the covenant lot program and the creation of covenant lots and covenant homes, the requirement for an IA system in these areas would make those numbers much harder for people to make sense to be able to do that. And again, here too, as with the town, eliminating the variance completely and removing that potential for expanded housing just drastically reduces, well, you know, it could have a significant impact on reducing housing opportunities and certainly housing flexibility. Next slide, please. So really, I just want to say that I'm certainly not indifferent to the concerns about the island's health, to the Board of Health's concerns about the island's health or environment. And at the risk of sounding self-aggrandizing, I'm an environmentalist. I have 2 degrees, both of which have the word environment in them. And I understand wanting to limit the use of bedroom variances to develop and create summer compounds. In the housing department, we're certainly not in the business of development by any means or the development of such summer compounds. However, housing is certainly a sustainability and environmental health issue, and sufficient housing reduces the strain on our infrastructure and in turn on the environment. So we really care deeply about getting these regulations right so that they encourage IA systems without eliminating housing or putting the burden on the year-round residents. Through collaboration over the past couple of weeks with the Land and Water Council, and I believe that Willa and Emily are here and willing to speak to this, we have a number of recommendations that might help move the proposed amendments to the regulations forward. So it would be helpful if there were, in terms of the IA requirement for an IA system, year-round resident or covenant lot exceptions or exemptions, a hardship waiver, or financial assistance similar to the closing cost assistance program that would provide a 0% or a low interest loan. And as the proposed amendments to the regulations stand, they require an IA system that the science says can support more bedrooms, but the regulations would eliminate the means to get those additional bedrooms on an island where we all know that housing is at an all-time premium. So in addition to the aforementioned carve-outs, we'd also recommend that they not eliminate the variance themselves. The variances are not special permits. They don't need to be granted if the criteria are met. They can and should be denied as appropriate. And our recommendation would be for the Board of Health to maintain the septic variance request for the bedroom allowance conditional on upgrading the IA system while adding a requirement like a year-round deed restriction, or certainly denying variances where it was clear that the extra bedrooms were going to be used to increase the profitability of a summer compound. So in conclusion, my request to the select board would be to send a letter advocating in support of these amendments to the proposed regulations. And that's it. Happy to take any questions.
Anybody?
I absolutely support maintaining an option for a variance and carve outs for year-round deed restrictions. The cost of the covenant programs, the cost of construction and land makes the covenant program virtually impossible to do new houses. Doing this would make it would kill the program in certain areas. And, we do want to encourage the development of year-round housing. And so I think as a priority, because housing is a priority, we're always trying to balance everything. I like the idea of maintaining the variance opportunity when it comes to year-round housing and affordable housing, for sure.
I would
Go
like,
ahead,
I would
Matt.
like to see more analysis of what this actually what the actual input is. It doesn't make any difference if you're, if you're polluting from a summer home or you're polluting from a year-round home into a watershed, and there's more than just nitrogen that's going in, as you know, because you can spell environmental and I can't. But if if that in fact, if they're both polluting, and so in what we have town and country. We're pointing our density into the town areas. That's where the Affordable Housing Trust Fund has made its efforts. It's buying property that it's connected to water and that can have density and that's close to stores, et cetera. We've got, we have planning documents that are following density in town nodes. I've been concerned about sort of cutting the high risk places into smaller and smaller pieces and parking 5 cars there and having that all run off into the ponds, et cetera. And I've asked, the town and other entities continually, what is the impact of more than just nitrogen? And sort of don't get the answer back. And so I think, I would like to have a better idea of it. And it's sort of, I spoke about it a little bit last week. And I think we have a lot of, I think we have time to do that. I think we have a lot of buildability already, in our back pocket that we can focus on, places that we bought to build in and other property the town owns that's appropriate to build on already. And I think we could do that and work toward this because I think we want to make sure we're not, under the guise of doing one thing, creating another set of problems. And so and I think I've been thinking a lot about it. It is the GIS, when we look at that GIS that it's like magic. It's amazing. And you look at that is all based on, spreadsheets and numbers and those, and that's what AI does. It can look at spreadsheets and it can do all sorts of stuff almost instantaneously. It's even more magic than GIS. And I think the questions that we ask about if we did this, what would happen? If we did that, what would happen? If that were all entered in, it would pump that stuff out to us immediately. And I think we spend a lot of time, and I know it'll take a while for us to get there, but I think if we make an effort, I think we could be there in a couple of years. The town is now able to translate into 60-something languages online. We've got, we're taking minutes, with AI and the minutes are happening. Things that a few years ago seemed impossible are now happening. So I would like to put the pressure on to get that stuff aligned so we know the actual impacts and we aren't listening to one advocate from one side and another advocate for another. It'd be great to be able to say, hey, this is what we'd like to do. And this is within 80-90%, planning numbers of what the impacts will be. And we could then say, oh, we can accept those impacts or not. And so that, that's my hope is that we get there someday. And, and I share some of your concerns.
Yeah. If I may, through you, Madam Chair. I think that, I hear everything you're saying. I think that's part of the concern with the variance, the elimination of the variance request is it just takes that tool away. And so maintaining the variance request enables it where there are situations where it's appropriate to have those extra bedrooms. It keeps that as an option, but it doesn't require those bedrooms to be put there. And I think I had something else I was going to say, but now I'm oh, I think this really represents, and I meant to say at the end of my presentation, I want to thank Will and Emily for the time that they spent with me, because I don't think that this needs to be, an issue where there's a one side advocating for the other. I think that was part of our work was we care about the environment, they care about housing. How can we work together to find a solution with these that we can push forward together?
Yeah.
So I think this is a good opportunity for, we're seeing in the housing department, the work that we're doing with the land bank and other organizations. It's another opportunity to push that collaboration between housing and more environmental groups forward.
I just think I really encourage the Board of Health not to close the door on something prematurely, that before we're able to do the analysis that Matt's talking about. I think to go too far now with unintended consequences is not a good idea. So if it's even just the variance process, and then it is a property by property, case by case analysis, eliminating that, could have individual negative impacts on important housing projects going forward. And I just don't want to see, I would not like to, I would like to, anyway. Sorry, tongue tied.
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you. I have a lot of ideas and things to say about this. First of all, I'm not sure we can eliminate variances. I'm not sure that's legal. I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think you can. I think we also have to be careful. I mean, remember, environment is one of our strategic options. And at some point, if we have too many houses and too many people, we won't have an environment and we won't need those houses anymore. That's going to happen. And I've been saying that for years. The island is getting to be too populated. When I proposed that moratorium, when I was back on the Board of Health, the idea was to make an assessment, a detailed assessment. And I would encourage, I'm not going to tell the Board of Health what to do. They're an independent organization and we have to respect that. I think there needs to be, as all of us said, continued analysis. There is a solution somewhere here. We cannot have, I've seen applications for like 10 bedrooms in a small area. I'm sorry, that's just not environmentally sound, just because you have an IA system. And IA systems take things out, not just nitrogen. All right. So I'm concerned when I hear no variances, but I'm concerned if we're rushing too far, and I'm concerned where we may be putting housing over the environment. And I'm sorry, I would prefer the environment over housing. I would move off the island if that would help. That's kind of the extreme. But let's make the assessment correctly.
Here's a thought, Malcolm. When part of the problem with, I understand, with regular septic systems and with IA systems is that they are meant to run continually. The microbes are in there and they're eating and they're doing their thing. But the way a lot of our housing is used, they fall asleep for the winter and then they get started again. And just when they're about to get going and be useful, they go to sleep again. And so maybe there's a way, for a year-round, fully occupied house to be looked at a little more favorably than one that isn't, for mechanical, physical reasons, because that is one of my understanding is that's one of the flaws with septic as it's used now. They don't necessarily work. So a lot of the times, even though people spend a lot of money on them.
Chair, I would defer that answer to.
So maybe there's something like that that could be.
That is a problem. And this past summer, we did have.
Oh, yeah.
I would refer that question to John, but that is a problem. And I remember the expert we had discuss before the board last summer, we talked a little bit about that perhaps there is something there to manipulate.
John Hedden, did you want to make a comment?
Yes, sorry, just trying to get my camera on here. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, having a little issue with my camera here, but thank you, everyone. John Hedden, Chief Environmental Health Officer with the town of Nantucket. Yeah, to comment on the IA systems and them getting their performance as far as being, started up, for seasonal residents. They can take about as long as a month to be operational, to be as effective as they should be. So that is an issue with them. It is a concern. With that said, Barnstable County, all IA systems are tracked through Barnstable County, and the samples are submitted to them, and each system on Nantucket's required to have 2 samples a year. And we do monitor those samples to see that the systems are performing the way that they should be based on the data that's available to us from the samples. So you are correct. Yes, it's not perfect that they're shut off and then turned back on, because they do take some time. There are some kind of additives or bag of bugs, they call it, to try and expedite that process. But it is just a matter of getting the biology in the system and working.
I think if I may, through you, Madam Chair,
Yes.
just to adjust a few of the things that I heard come up. I think that, and I think this should be a part of the analysis, although I'm not sure that the housing department would necessarily be the appropriate. I mean, we're glad to be part of it, but I think we should be a component of it. I'd be really interested to see what the numbers are, because on the one hand, I agree that the people in the house, it's, kind of 6-1/2 if you have a year-round family in a house versus a seasonal person coming to stay in a short-term rental. But I think about the impact, of all the people visiting and everything that they bring to the island, which I think is part of the conversation, that capturing these as year-round houses is really important from that perspective. And I think also that, there's lots of discussion about, obviously this came up in the short-term rental conversation, and there's discussion around, do we need a year-round rental registry? And we know that if and when that happens, we're going to see the truth of what's happening in terms of overcrowding. And so eliminating the option for extra bedrooms, especially if there's a year-round deed restriction on it where folks can potentially go into, that's really important, because the overcrowding is greatly taxing our infrastructure and then therefore our environment when people are living in houses that aren't fit for them. And then lastly, I think one thing that I just find helpful for me in these conversations is I'd like to just personally avoid the dichotomy between like choosing between housing and the environment. I think that's what it means to live in a place. And as I think our work here with Land and Water shows, it could be very beneficial to find a collaborative path forward.
Good afternoon or evening. Rocky Marmontes, Public Health Director. And I just want to address a couple of things. First of all, those studies that identified our nitrogen sensitive areas, Nantucket, Nantucket Harbor, and Hummock Pond, were done 15, 20 years ago. Now, the most recent report that was developed by UMass, I guess about a year ago was the last one I saw, still identified Hummock Pond as a nitrogen sensitive area. So I don't know how you would identify or weigh how many houses or how much development equals a danger, but I can tell you that nitrogen in your drinking water from a public health perspective is incredibly dangerous for the population. We have a sole source aquifer. The Wellhead Recharge District is one of these protected areas. This is the Hummock Pond area. The nitrates in your water, which is what they become when it makes it into the drinking water, it causes cancer. It's pretty well connected to such, particularly colon cancer. There's something called blue baby syndrome, where if you have a small child, an infant, that drinks water with nitrate in it, It actually affects the ability for hemoglobin to carry oxygen in that child who has not developed the ability to detoxify as an adult has. So very dangerous to have nitrates. So to be able to determine or guess what is the right amount, I think is really difficult to do, but it's not something you don't want to go too far. And I will also say that these nitrogen credits or bedroom credits are already not allowed in Nantucket or in the Nantucket Harbor. So I would just say, the studies are great, but it's going to be very difficult to determine what the right amount is. But I would certainly encourage the caution in not going too far.
So are you kind of saying if we're already over, we shouldn't be thinking we can add more?
What I'm saying is I don't know that we are over. I just know that it continues to be nitrogen sensitive, but we certainly don't want to be Cape Cod, which had 90% of their waterways that were deemed unsafe, and they are being forced to install IA systems throughout that whole entire area. And that hasn't happened in Nantucket primarily because we have been very proactive as an island in preventing such nitrogen overload.
Madam Chair, and Rock may correct me or not, but the proposed regulations are not that different from the harbor watershed, right? So
That's correct.
It's expanding the regulations to more of the island is essentially what we're doing.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. What it's doing is it's making the regulations, and these are new regulations, are not amendments. They are making them the same as what they are in Nantucket and what they already are in the Nantucket Harbor District. And so it is eliminating those bedroom credits, which is not to say it's not eliminating the ability to develop your property. It's just the extra bedroom credits.
So they're not really new they're just expanding what we have.
Through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, that's correct.
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Rocky, you're already going back to your seat, but I may have something to clarify with you. So I've been on the Board of Health for like 3 months now. And one thing I think is interesting is that in Title V, the standards are really nitrogen. It's not emerging contaminants and PFAS and all that, which is incredibly important, obviously, and something that the town has taken a leadership role with. But it's kind of difficult to kind of put that over on this because there's no standards in Title V. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, that's correct. For PFAS, that's correct. But I think that nitrogen, it gets a lot of attention because it is so dangerous. I mean, I would almost rather have drink a little bit of PFAS and a little bit of nitrogen or nitrates.
So I think what the housing department is asking for is reasonable, given that housing is also number one on our strategic plan, and that it gives the Board of Health options to weigh in its own purview and what it's allowed to consider. Like the Board of Health is not allowed to consider what a residence may be used for. Like we can't say, oh, well, this extra bedroom is either going to be a year round or it's going to be used by a summer person once, and there's going to be an extra car in the driveway. So that means more usage. Like that we can't do that. That's a completely separate policy discussion in another area. So I think in this case, what the presentation that Dylan and Christie's office put together is asking us to do, to send a letter, is reasonable given our full strategic plan and also the assets, the properties that we already have, and trying to meet the shy list number, build more affordable housing, municipal employees, all the stuff in the Seasonal Communities Act, et cetera.
If I may
Go ahead.
I believe it was at the November, might have been the December Board of Health meeting too. And obviously I'm not an expert in nitrogen in the water, but I do believe Mark Willett also came, the water director came and said that, the nitrogen levels in these areas have been stable and they have not seen spikes over the past 20 years. So I think that's just a little additional added context too.
Campbell.
Hi, Campbell Sutton. So I think I've gotten confused in the conversation. So is the goal here to allow just the Title V and not the IA systems in these areas? Is that right? Because those are the two things that are under discussion is the Title V septic system that a lot of properties have and the IA system that properties are being requested to get. In some cases, they have to get.
Campbell, I'll take a stab at this. I may need Rocky or John to help, but Title V is the Massachusetts law that's the standard for septic systems that every city and town in the Commonwealth has to follow. And the difference between a conventional system and an IA system is different. The IA system is much more, pulls more nitrogen,
Right. I
et
got all
cetera,
that.
out of the. So what the house, I'll let Dylan fill in a very quick summary.
If I can through you, Madam Chair. So what the housing department is requesting is that there be carved. So if the proposed amendments go through, then homeowners under a set of conditions would have to put in an IA system. So we're requesting certain carve outs for affordability and for year-round home ownership. And then also requesting that the Board of Health not eliminate the variance to request the bedroom variance request. That does not mean that they couldn't deny those variances. That would obviously be well within their authority.
Okay, that's what I was sort of getting. I'm a little concerned that I think we should be moving into the IA systems as much as possible wherever we can, especially if there's this additional bedroom, which is additional use. I get year round, it'll keep the septic system alive. And then the other piece that I was like, well, how about those people that are here for 5 weeks? They're here for 4, so it's just starting to work and then they leave. So I don't know, it seems like there needs to be a way to keep those systems, prime them before people get here, right? And then keep them going for a little bit after people leave so that the treatment can be as complete as possible. But thanks for your time.
Campbell, come to public comment at Board of Health. We can talk about it then.
Madam Chair, if I
Yes.
through you just say that, I can't speak to the priming running of the septic systems, but our recommendation would be that for the bedroom credit, they would absolutely have to get the IA system. And we are aligned that the island should be moving towards IA systems where necessary. We should be moving towards IA systems across the board. We just do not want to see year-round people displaced because they can't afford the $40,000 plus annual maintenance fees if they're required in areas to put an IA system. But that is clearly the best science for what it does.
So I would support just writing a letter to the Board of Health, kind of pointing these things out while they're crafting their policy. Does that make any sense? Okay.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, I would have to see the letter before I would sign it.
Okay. When are they supposed to talk about this again?
They meet again on January 15th, but maybe Tom could speak to whether or not they plan to close the public meeting then or not, or could continue it.
I mean, we have a meeting next week, so maybe we could maybe we could add this to the agenda next week and we could have the letter submitted to our packet
Absolutely.
in the next couple of days.
No problem.
Does that make sense? Okay. I think we have consensus on that.
Yeah, I'm a little hesitant, but that's all right.
Well, let's just read
I'd like
the
to read the
letter.
letter and see. Yeah.
But let's keep it very diplomatic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd like to obviously thank you all, and I'd like to thank the health department and John in particular for spending time with me on it, and Will and Emily. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
I'm a little bit worried of putting our finger on the scale, of one thing at the expense maybe of another. And I think that's kind of, so.
I think everyone.
I think we all are, but
I think we're asking them to consider the impact
Yeah,
on
okay.
year-round housing as they develop their policy. I think that's, I don't necessarily say we're telling them what to do. I think they need to,
Well, Madam Chair, maybe we could just go to the meeting and tell them that. I think a letter kind of is an official board policy. And I'm sort of like my colleague here, concerned about that. I mean, no one's stopping you from going to the board and saying what you want. My opinion.
Okay, well, if we want to go that route, we need to post a meeting. So we need to make a decision on that. I'm just saying if you, can we just review the letter next week?
Let's look at that.
Let's
And
just
then we
look
can
at the
decide
letter.
whether we
Who's
want to send it
drafting
or
it?
not.
Okay.
Okay,
So we'll add that to next week's agenda.
yes, please. Department of Public Works Solid Waste Division request for adoption of emergency solid waste regulation regarding disposal of yard waste at Town of Nantucket Solid Waste Facility. That was a mouthful.
Good evening, Chris Lowe, DPW Solid Waste Manager. So I'm here tonight to describe the justification for the emergency regulation that we've submitted. An issue happened at the solid waste facility where a local contractor has discontinued its composting operation and is attempting to dispose of a large amount of material at the Nantucket Solid Waste Facility, claiming it qualifies as leaf and yard waste. DPW Solid Waste has determined that the material does not meet the town's definition of leaf and yard waste and possesses an operational and financial risks. So why the material is not acceptable? The town defines leaf and yard waste must be generated directly from yard maintenance activities and transported directly from the site of generation to the town facility. The material in question originated from a commercial composting site, not a site of generation. It was stockpiled and partially processed. And we do not know if it has any, excuse me, and it could possess unknown or untreated contamination levels. DPW cannot verify how the material was altered or whether it complies with regulatory standards. The DPW solid waste determination. Without testing or documentation, DPW solid waste cannot presume the material qualifies as leaf and yard waste, nor can we assume that the material does not present an environmental or operational hazard. Solid waste facility has limited space and storage and processing capacity. Large volumes of unplanned or unannounced deliveries would disrupt normal operations and offset ongoing fire mitigation efforts at the solid waste facility. Financial impact. The town recently entered into a waste service agreement with Waste Options, Nantucket. The DPW solid waste fiscal year 26 budget is a hybrid budget based on the previous year's waste service agreement, the current waste service agreement, and historical waste volume trends. Leaf and yard waste has never exceeded 14,000 tons annually. We worry that this contractor may seek to deliver 14,000 to 20,000 tons within a short period of time. Currently, leaf and yard waste carries a $0 tip fee for both residents and commercial entities. Accepting this material would create a substantial budget issue, as leaf and yard waste in excess of 1,100 tons in any given month carries a $93 charge to the $93 a ton charge to the town of Nantucket. If 14 to 20,000 tons were brought in a single month, the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund would be subject to unexpected expenses, which were not budgeted for, in the range of $1.2 to $1.7 million. As a result of the new waste service agreement, the town must implement controls and have ability to regulate inbound waste to remain within the solid waste enterprise funds approved budget. Emergency justification. The situation constitutes an emergency due to misclassification of a waste, unknown material composition, significant unanticipated volume, financial exposure, and risk of continued uncontrolled deliveries. We are requesting that the Select Board adopt this emergency declaration, formally supporting DPW's temporary ban and associated restrictions. By doing so, this would protect the town operations, finances, and prevent acceptance of unplanned and unbudgeted waste material, and afford us the time to draft and adopt long-term policies in line with new waste service agreement and the operational and environmental goals of the solid waste facility.
Any questions? Comments? Motions?
Move to approve.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Town managers report. Libby?
Okay, so I just want to make sure I am looking at the same document that you all have. And Erica, I just sent you a document that I had dated January 3rd. So
Have access to that.
okay. So we'll go with this. I'm going to just try to put these sort of side by side here and go with the one from the second. I don't think it's terribly different. So what I wanted to go over is just to show the board that we've moved out of the outline phase of warrant articles into the draft warrant phase. So I'm just going to take you through this, and I'm going to need a little help from John here. So first off, I think this concept was introduced a couple of weeks ago of adopting the town meeting warrant without the election warrant attached to it. So separating them, which we haven't done for a while now because we have tended to know what the ballot questions are ahead of time. And I think we have maybe a good idea, although we do need some continued direction from the board to determine what ballot questions, specifically debt exclusions, that we are going to put on. And I think we know that the big one, the island home, we aren't going to be getting the bids in until much closer to town meeting. So I think the thought was, well, John, why don't you explain the thought? I don't want to explain your thought for you.
Thank you, Libby. Good evening, everyone. So the dilemma that we're facing is whether or not a new ballot question for our island home is going to be necessary based upon policies developed by the Department of Revenue. As you know, the ballot question passed at last May's annual town election, although the appropriation did not pass at the annual town meeting. So the question is, what is going to be the scope of the project once we get the rebid numbers in? And how different is that than what was in the minds of the voters when they approved the ballot question last year? And we're not going to know that until those new bids are submitted. I think one thing is clear: we're not going to have those new bids. Well, if the board was to proceed with the traditional method, which is to include the election warrant within the annual town meeting warrant, we would have to make decisions on ballot questions essentially by the third week in January. And that's going to be way before the bids are submitted. So the concept here would be that we, in essence, decouple the election warrant with the town meeting warrant, so that the third week in January, the board would simply be approving the town meeting warrant. Once the bids are opened, we will have hopefully a period of perhaps a week, 10 days, 2 weeks, something in that order, to analyze those bids and seek a determination from the Department of Revenue whether in fact we will need a new ballot question. The challenge is that the town must notify the town clerk within 35 days of the annual town election what the wording of those ballot questions will be. So if it is determined that we do need a new ballot question, the board would have to notify the town clerk, as I said, within 35 days before the election, which brings it something in the order of April 14th. And you would notify the town clerk before that date so that she can have the ballot questions printed. You only actually have to post the warrant for the town elections 7 days ahead of time. So we would prepare a separate election warrant and bring that to the select board for a vote and approval. If the bids are such that the scope of this project will exceed the scope that was considered last May, and this is where it gets tricky. There's no hard and fast rule here, but the Department of Revenue will look to see whether it's quote unquote the same project or not. And after allowing for a reasonable increase in the price due to inflation and other factors, the DOR may determine that a new ballot question is in fact necessary. And as long as we get that determination at least 35 days before the election, we can notify the town clerk to include an additional ballot question for our island home. And we would then use the technical amendment process to go ahead and prepare a motion that had the actual amount for the appropriation, and it either would contain or not contain the contingent language that you are used to seeing in all your major project appropriations. Now, the alternative here would simply be to move forward with a new ballot question now, keep the same process you've had for many years, which is a combined warrant, and just go forward with a ballot question for the Maytown meeting. That may not be necessary, however, but you're not going to know that until, as I said, the new bids come in and we get a determination from DOR. So are there any questions from the board about this process?
Brooke?
So through you, Don, to John, say we want to ask the voters to approve our island home by both votes, then we would just proceed with the joint warrant. I mean,
Yes.
The question in my mind is, do I want the voters to reaffirm the ballot vote before we move this project forward? I mean, I think the conversation we've had about our island home in terms of, that the intention is to keep the facility open only as long and eventually close it if the voters don't approve
Right.
This version. I'm inclined to say I would like to see both votes again and not use last year's vote. So the only reason to do this decoupling would be
correct.
I would actually agree with Brooke. I think we should move forward with both. We want them to pass both with the same voter registration or whatnot, and the ballot vote is majority. It's not the 2/3 that's required at town meeting. So if it passes at town meeting, my assumption would be that it would pass the ballot again. I don't really feel super comfortable with the idea of a whole year out trying to utilize that ballot question.
Yeah, I agree. And if the numbers change a little bit and DOR says it's okay, but we don't, then people will say we're trying to it's too confusing. We're trying to play games, et cetera, et cetera. I think I had to read the stuff in a packet 2 or 3 times a day to start to understand what it was going on. And I think, and I'm dealing with it every day. So I think it'd be easier just to put them both together all in one.
Madam Chair, I think we have total agreement.
Okay, so is that enough direction on that?
Yes,
Thanks, John.
thank you.
Okay, so keeping going here. I think the next item is Article 11. And that is the actual article for our island home. And there were a couple of comments here. So John, this may have been answered at this point. Whether or not
Yes, you can ignore my comment there, Libby, and
Okay.
just keep the language as you had originally prepared it, with including the contingency language at the end, which is standard for all major capital projects that need a debt exclusion. So
Okay.
you would ignore my comment, basically.
Okay. Article 12 is the school athletic facilities improvements. Now, what we have asked the school for some specifics as to the material of the field, and they've sent something, but I think it's not quite what we're looking for, John.
Yeah, could you
Or
just
we've asked for some additional description.
scroll down a little bit here? Yeah, so I think there's been a little bit of an update here, Libby,
Yeah.
from what you have. The article came over from the school with a qualifier that the project would include a synthetic PFAS-free turf field. And I raised the question, well, what exactly does PFAS-free mean? And if you do a simple Google or an AI, it's sometimes PFAS-free is sometimes meant to refer to below detection limits, and in other times it means that it meets all drinking water standards. So I think that we need further clarification, and the consultant did come back from the school with a further clarification, essentially saying it would not, the material could not have any intentionally added PFAS, and it would have to be in line with existing detection limits. And we're just looking for some further clarification from the engineer. I think what that means is that any turf product that is synthetic turf product that is used would not exceed the detection levels for drinking water standards. And we're just waiting to hear back from the school whether that is the intent here. And hopefully we'll know by next week whether there's going to be any further changes to this language. So the select board meeting next week. The idea here is we want to have certainty. You want to go to town meeting with a requirement that is easy to understand and can be implemented, because even if this article were to pass using the term PFAS-free turf, we don't really know what that means, and it could invite some controversy or objection after the fact. So we want to be as precise as possible in the language that's used. So this is a work in progress, but hopefully the next iteration back from the school department will provide some clarity on this.
Yep. Thank you, John. And
Can
next
I-
week you will have an updated.
Matt, go
Yeah,
ahead.
glad, John, I'm glad to hear that that we are defining PFAS free. There are some communities that have been, guaranteed it was going to be, and they found it hasn't, and they are now embroiled in lawsuits, et cetera, over it. I also have shared these concerns with, but I'll share them here, is we are in a class action lawsuit over PFAS, a large one. And I think that we have to make sure that we do not undermine our own position by installing something that we find out later isn't PFAS safe or PFAS free.
Right.
So, so there's some serious consequences, that really need to be understood. My kind of, being a little cynical, my thing is, well, just make sure that the consultants and the engineers, the people who put it in are all on the hook forever. And if it's their responsibility if something goes wrong, because what happens a lot of times is they look at the town and go, oh, you didn't read this right, or oh, you didn't see paragraph 3, number 4, and then we end up in a lawsuit after the fact once everyone's paid. And so, yeah, I just think that it's good that we're doing, have town council doing due diligence on this. There's a lot that could happen. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Matt. The next item is Article 13, Town Employee Housing Design. And there has been an update on this. I haven't had a chance to review it yet, but it's not substantive, it's just wording. And we are going to need this is where we're going to need the board direction on if we are proceeding with, I know there's been a concern about debt exclusion questions and how many are going to be put forward. The next one, I'm just going by mine, Erica, so hopefully they're more or less the same. 14 is Loram Barracks repairs. And that I think is basically written as it would be included if the board is going to include it. 15 is the Somerset Sewer Needs Area Sewer Extension, and I think that this is a little bit hinging upon the sewer master plan discussion workshop that you're having on Monday at 4:30. And that is where more information was going to be discussed as to the funding of this project and the timing and some of the impacts that Matt was speaking about earlier. Tom Nevers Park debris removal and erosion control. I think this is pretty much the same. I have been asked by an outside party if the town has sought federal grants for this. And I think the answer is more or less, yes, we have. There aren't really grants out there. Federal earmarks is what we've been trying to pursue, and they haven't really materialized. But I did want to double check on that a little bit. But other than that, I think this just needs, again, whether or not the board is going to include it. The supplemental appropriation for public works facility improvements design. The idea here was to fund that from free cash, not through a debt exclusion. And we do have, the director and I have put a little bit of a work group together on this. And that work group has met a couple of times already. I don't know if they're going to have a recommendation on this specific article for town meeting, but in order to move the project forward, it does need more design money. Okay, and then the Harbor Master Building, I'm just kind of waiting on, this is probably in my email somewhere, whether or not we need a placeholder for this. I think as we know, there are some ideas that this project, which does need supplemental funding, could be potentially funded from the blade failure settlement. So I think we're kind of waiting a little bit more to see if it could happen. Okay, and then we have some regular articles: enterprise fund operations, capital expenditures for them, budget transfers, waterways. Let me skip up to article. Well, you'll see some comments from me off to the side. I'm up to it's 28, Erica, but the numbers are not correct at this point. There's just some notes that I have on the side for others to get back to me, and that I might need to do a little bit more work on. There's an article called Article 19, which is not going to be Article 19. It's somewhere around page, I can't be right, page 10. Maybe that is right. Review renewal of Board of Health Septic System Betterment Loan Program. That was in your outline, and this is the actual article for it. And, oh, John, you approved that one. Okay. Community Preservation Committee. And then we got a couple of citizen articles. This, and again, at the top of this document, it indicates that the ordering of the articles is subject to the board approving it. We typically put any citizen articles that are seeking potential funds after all of the town appropriation articles. So that's where these are. Zoning. We have received some zoning articles now. I didn't get a chance to get them in here yet, but they are mostly in there. Apparently they are still working on a couple of them, but you'll have actual articles in here next week. And you've gotten a briefing on them as it is. And then we've got the citizen zoning, a couple of general law items. The noise bylaw, that is on page, I think, 14 of the warrant, not your packet, but the warrant. And I have included what I believe was most recently discussed by the board, and I think agreed to by the board on November 5th. And there was a tiny little issue. The issue of golf course maintenance came up, and what we had discussed at the time was inserting on section 5, where it says commercial operation in gray highlighting, and then again the commercial operation other than as for the purposes of routine golf course maintenance. That's what we had in there, and then subsequently Attorney Alger submitted some alternative potential language. It's more detailed than what is in here, and I think, John, you indicated that we could use either. So that's just going to need a little bit of board determination there.
On that, I would like to make sure they've all represented that they use the quietest equipment possible, et cetera. I would like to make sure that we have some guarantee of that in there. You know, they're all saying that they're going to electric and it's more quiet, et cetera. You know, I want to make sure that that somehow that stays in there. So.
Okay, John, I'm looking to you on that one.
Okay.
Yeah, because they've
Quiet
represented that
equipment.
that's what they're doing, and I know I believe they are, but I don't want to make it so, I don't want to leave a loophole and they go, oh, look, we can do whatever we want. So I don't think they would do that because they're all, good neighbors and they know they have to be because everyone's right near them or some people are right near them. Anyway.
Okay, we can work on that.
Perhaps maybe ask Attorney Alger if there's a definition of that quieter type of equipment that we could put in there that makes sense.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, more info on that next week. Council for Human Services should be all set. We have a couple of revolving fund articles. We are adding 2 revolving funds. One is for electric vehicle charging stations. This needs to be a little bit updated. This article, I got some additional updates recently. And tax title, there were some changes to the tax title laws in early 2025, and it allows towns to put fees and charges collected from tax title foreclosures into a revolving fund to help offset the legal expenses. Stormwater. I am waiting.
You're on it right now. Yeah, you good. Yep.
Okay.
Sorry. Stormwater. I'm trying to do this on the one screen with a whole bunch of windows. So stormwater, I'm waiting for that bylaw to be given to me, and there is a group working on this. I don't know if Greg, if you have an update on that one. I think other people are working on it.
Greg said no.
Oh,
No, okay.
sorry about that. No.
Thank you. I had to turn, I can't see the room and the document at the same time. Okay, this satellite, this is a couple of citizen articles here. Now, we talked some time ago about the Baxter Road property, the town-owned property for erosion control. And it is my understanding that we have most recently determined not to include this in the 2026 annual town meeting because there are a lot of unresolved issues right now. I think that remains accurate.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Housing has a couple of articles. I'm waiting for a little bit of information on them. I think they're actively working on this and I may have gotten something. The home rule petition for the Planning and Economic Development Commission enabling legislation. I think that is still being worked on. This is their most recent draft, but I think they're still working on it. There's a little bit of comments there from the director. I'm up to page 20 in the warrant, Erica. Home rule petition for the town to acquire easements in connection with Somerset Lane multi-use path. I am waiting for a few things from Vicky John from Real Estate Legal.
Yeah, Vicky, as of today, had provided quite a few comments on the articles as they were originally drafted.
Yep. Okay.
And you were copied on that. They're in a separate email. So you, I think we're pretty much up to speed on our comments on the various real estate articles.
Okay, so you all will have, this will be updated for next week. And then we have a couple of citizen articles that are sort of legislative related, where it says real estate need all there, I think I have all those now, those will go in for next week. There's another citizen article about Boynton Lane, and then we have stabilization fund and free cash. And then if we keep going down more and more, we've got the offices. I just need to get confirmation of those. I think those are final. And these debt exclusions that we've already talked about. These are the companion ballot questions for the debt exclusion warrant articles that need to be determined. And we have one capital outlay exclusion, which we usually have for various capital items. And those are under consideration right now by the Capital Program Committee. And so that's the update. And again, next week you will have a more final document heading towards the 21st when we hopefully adopt this.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to elaborate on one of the articles that Libby addressed.
Yes,
and
go ahead.
that is the Harbor Master Building. Brian Turbot and I, the finance director, and I have been talking about the way to deal with this. And the suggestion is that the supplemental appropriation would be funded through unallocated free cash that the town is anticipating will be certified by the Department of Revenue quite shortly, if not already. And we would potentially seek a payment from the settlement funds prior to town meeting, which would go into the general fund and then be recertified next year as free cash. So it would essentially be a wash. Free cash, certified free cash would be used this year, but those funds would be replenished, as I said, from a payment out of the settlement fund. So that's basically what we're looking at. So this would be in the motion, I believe, for capital projects, but it would be funded from free cash.
And that would still give us the option if we had another good year next year and had plenty of free cash of not reimbursing it, correct, John?
Yes, yeah, you would, that's correct, Matt.
All right.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
It's all tied up with the citizen petition by Val Oliver to create a special purpose stabilization fund and dedicate any payments from Vineyard Wind and other parties that would go into a stabilization fund and then would have to be could only be expended by a vote of town meeting. So we want to resolve this issue prior to town meeting before that is voted on. But even if that were approved, I think the approach we're taking would be consistent. The town would be consistent with the desire to use those settlement funds in a way that doesn't jeopardize other potential funding sources, if that makes sense.
Sorry, John, were there some concerns with the wording of Val's article that because we were going against, we were taking money, but then saying we could only use it against people we taken money from? Didn't you have some issues with that, or am I thinking of another thing?
I don't think I had an issue with that. There are some technical problems with the way that petitioned article is drafted. But as I said, and if you're really interested, I'll be meeting with or attending the Finance Committee hearing tomorrow, I believe, on the citizen articles. I think the deficiencies can be easily corrected in a motion. If the Finance Committee is in favor, we could craft a motion that would address those very technical requirements for this to be in proper legal form.
Okay. Are we all set? Committee reports?
Oh,
Oh, I'm
budget.
sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm like, wait, are we done? Review
Nice try, Don.
and discussion of proposed FY 2027 general fund budget continued from December 17th.
Lose Libby. I know this is mostly a placeholder in case the board has any questions.
I didn't see, there were not substantial changes or hardly any changes from last week that I saw. Yeah.
It was the same presentation
The same one,
since it was first presented.
I don't have any questions.
No, I'm fine with it.
Okay. Then are there any committee reports? Go ahead.
Go ahead, ladies.
So the NPNEDC had a meeting with a group of people representing the citizen warrant petitioners regarding the enabling legislation of the NPNEDC. There was a lot of really good dialogue, exchange, and really sort of explanation about why those of us on the commission have strong feelings or flexibility on certain elements of the things that are distinguished. The goal is an attempt to come to a compromise that would result in the petitioners withdrawing the citizen warrant article and then sending one or just having one article on the warrant by whatever means. I don't know whether that's amending the citizens or removing it and replacing it with something that's agreed upon from a process point of view. So we do have another meeting on the 15th, realizing that have a very tight timeline here. But there's hopefully an opportunity to come to consensus.
Yeah, I attended as well, and it was the best discussion I have seen on this over the last couple of years, and people really, I was very encouraged by the conversation, and I think, I think there's really only one kind of point that I could see, really one or 2 points of contention really that are left that hopefully they can be bridged, and I'll leave it at that. I was pleasantly surprised. It seemed like it was going in a good direction.
Well, hopefully that can come together.
Yeah.
Tom?
Madam Chair, John mentioned the FinCom meeting tomorrow. I believe that's canceled. Erica, do you know? Or postponed? Okay. Okay. I don't see the agenda posted on. Yeah, okay.
Malcolm?
I'd just like to give an update on the African American House investigation, reminding everyone that the investigator is an independent investigator. The investigation is being directed by that investigator, not by anyone else or the committee. And then as of this date, he has not requested any meetings or any additional information beyond the documents that he has requested.
Maybe you could just send a quick email to your work group. Maybe you could send that in an email to your work group to make sure that they understand. Anybody else? Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That carries unanimously. Thanks, everyone online and here.